And we have a meeting each first Thursday of the month to film a program for our cable television station, the Government Channel 12. And so this will be shown all through the month, and people can watch it there, or they can come down here and see it, because after the program's over, then, for those of you who haven't seen the house, we have an opportunity to have a tour of the house. And an excellent person to give it to you, Ron Turner, who's one of the descendants of Richard Turner, who was the brother of James Turner. Now tonight we have two wonderful guests who have done a really nice service for our city, I think, and that is to develop a book of photographs for us. And they are Jim MacLean, who is the local history librarian at the Capital Area Library downtown, the Clarenceville Library. And our other person is Craig Whitford, who's running the equipment, and he is the president of the Lansing Historical Society. Both great, knowledgeable people about our local history, and I know you're going to enjoy this program tonight.
The question is, that I always have when we do these presentations, is Craig runs the projector and I get to stand up front, which I don't think is very fair, but we're going to begin. And I think Craig's going to start. What we're going to do is run through some of the photos in the book. We're not going to go completely through the text because it's fairly long. We're just going to give you a synopsis and point out things we think that you'd be interested in seeing in the photos.
That's right, and these are our favorite photographs out of the book. Jim selected some of his, and he'll be giving the background history on those, and I selected some of my favorites from the book as well, and I'll be giving you the background on those. Lansing, as you all know, was originally the area in which it was known as Biddle City at that time, and that was in 1836. The book takes you from 1836 to 1939, almost a century of our history, taking you through the time that it was known as Michigan, when the capital was relocated here from Detroit, right up to before, on the eve of World War II. So we incorporate within the book the auto industry and its impact, public safety, public service, the departments that have served the community, city views and things like that. The book is divided into 7 chapters, and each of those you'll see just a selection of photographs as we go through it. First chapter is City Views. In this first view, if you'll remember what the cover looked like when you were looking at one of the first slides, this is an enlargement of that cover photograph. And this is a view looking from the southeast. So it's actually looking towards the northwest. And it was taken right around 1879 by Charles H. Meade. And if some of you were here for the program that I gave on Charles Meade, you'll know that he was perhaps one of our finest photographers and artists within the city during that time period. He took a number of views. These came to light just a few years ago out of a scrapbook that was unearthed. So these are actually previously unpublished photographs. And as you can see, the Capitol just stands as a monument within the city, and it's really highlighted by the Grand River. Along the bottom there, you can see the Michigan Southern Railway tracks. The Plymouth Congregational Church is the large steeple there to the left of the Capitol building. In between the Plymouth Congregational and the main Capitol building, you can see the original Capitol, the 1847 structure. And then further to the left, you have the Lansing Hotel.
Would it be helpful if I pointed these out, or?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Is that the oldest castle?
No, right there. That's the Lansing Hotel. And obviously you can see the Congregational Church, but there's the steeple for the old Capitol.
Oh.
Okay, you can just see it just peek right above that tree there. It's there, so it's just an incredible photograph that was taken, and throughout the book there are several photographs taken by Charles Meade that had never been published before.
And the scrapbook was in storage for...
Since about the 1930s anyways, had been in a storage
I haven't seen
bin.
any of these images.
So,
This is Michigan Avenue and Large Street. And it's from the standpoint. What's interesting is we've identified this as maybe the Union Depot. There's never been we've never found another image of that depot that was off Michigan Avenue. There were several depots on Michigan Avenue, but this is the one we were pretty excited about. Right here is the old, I think it was, let me check. It was the Fifth Ward School, which later becomes the First Pilgrim Congregational Church.
Looks a lot different today, doesn't it?
And further in the very, very corner up there was a creamery. It was called the Crystal Cream Creamery.
So Large Street is at the bottom here?
The Large Street, yeah, Large Street is running this in this direction, and this is Michigan Avenue. You can barely make out the Boys Industrial School up here,
And starts, it's the beginning of the
campus.
circa, you say, what year?
Oh, what did we put it at? We put it at sometime in the probably 1860s, late 1860s. Would have to be because that depot was gone.
This is a photograph of Washington Avenue looking north from Michigan. And this is actually part of a stereo view that was done in the 1880 approximately. On the right-hand side there, the first building right on the corner is the first known photograph of the Second National Bank of Lansing. One of our first banking houses within the town. Further up the block, you can see the humpback roof. That is Mead's Hall. So again, I'm mentioning Mead again. James I. Mead, again, one of the first theaters within the city. Beyond that yet, the next tall building there was the Grange office. If you cross the street, you have Baird's Opera House, or Buck's Opera House as it was known at this time.
You can just make out the tower.
From that standpoint. The boot sign, can you point that out, Jim? Right there, and keep your eye on that. But the boot sign across the street marks the shoe store of H.A. Woodworth. Okay, and you're going to see that image again. Now I mentioned, yep, question?
So this building on our left is where the Bank of Lansing is now?
That's correct. Yep, where the Bank of Lansing is today.
So this is looking north?
Looking north.
Yep.
This is Michigan Bells, well, it's not Michigan Bells, what is it, AT&T now? That's the parking lot where the theater used to be. Is that little parking lot on the corner?
SBC.
Yeah, SBC. I still say Michigan Bell.
And I mentioned the Second National Bank, and if you're around in the late 1870s, this is an example of the currency that you would have spent. This is in black and white. The actual piece of currency has a red seal, a red treasury seal in the upper right-hand corner there. There are only 3 of these notes known on the Second National Bank of Lansing. This is what numismatists refer to as an original series. This is a series from 1865. This was actually produced in the 1870s. But then there's another series from the 1870s, part of the National Banking Act and national currency. But just beautiful currency. These were known as horse blankets at the time. They weren't the small size that you carry in your bills today. Colorful and decorative, and it looks like our currency is somewhat going back that way with all the rainbow colors that are in the new 20 that come out. The signatures are of Ephraim Longear and Jacob L. Lannerman. Lannerman was a dentist within the city at the time, and he is signed it as vice president. Ephraim Longear, the Longear brothers, judges, attorneys, counselors of law. Yeah.
And their sons eventually owned the lumberyard in Lansing.
Yeah. So the Longear family is well known within the area, but that's what you would have been spending in your wallet, out of your wallet.
Where are these going now?
In private collections, all 3 of them.
How locally?
One of them, this one.
Is it printed on the reverse?
It's printed on the reverse with an image. The reverse is actually black and green with a black central vignette and a green border. Very decorative. And I think not only does Lansing City on the Grand contain photographs of the city, but also ephemeral items, okay, memorabilia through the years, and you'll see some of that tonight. I think it's important because it goes beyond photographs. It goes beyond, it is the culture and the society. So, but there's that.
This is the central business district in about 1871. On the corner, there's 2 stores here actually. This is Russell, F.F. Russell. He had a a stationery, a paper and stationery store. He eventually sells it in the 1890s, I believe, to Jennison. And next to it is Montgomery Tobacco, which was owned by Kerr, who was the son of the editor of the state, I'm not sure if it was the State Republican, yeah, the State Republican at the time. Obviously the streets are in very bad shape, they're dirt, but you can just make out the wooden sidewalks right along here, which is really interesting. But it's fascinating that people came to town. It's just, I can't even relate to that coming to town. In a horse and buggy. I'm trying to think, I can't remember what the building is next door, maybe Craig knows.
No.
The large structure.
Are any of the buildings that we'll see tonight still standing?
Some of them. What we tried to do in the book was either find photos that people hadn't seen before, photos that were misidentified, or, for example, when we go into the community area, we were looking at, for example, the churches. Most of the older churches downtown are still standing, but a lot aren't, so we went that way, thinking that if we did another continuation of this, we would use a lot of the buildings that are still standing. So there are some, like Arbogs is here. An interesting maps photo.
Where is this? Where was
This would be
building?
about 117 South Washington.
Oh, okay.
117.
So that'd be the west side?
It would, but they renumbered the streets. I'm not sure. I think we took the modern day numbering, where we would say this, because the streets were renumbered 2 or 3 times. I think it was twice during the 1890s. So that in the book, the addresses that are given are the exact position where they would have been today. Not the numbering from the 1870s or 1890s.
This is a photograph of Washington Avenue south from Michigan Avenue, circa the 1870s. And this photograph is actually by Scottford, as was the Second National Bank photograph, and taken from a stereopticon view, okay? A dual image that was the entertainment of the time period. On the northwest, on the corner, on the left-hand side is Wood's Central Art Gallery, and that's above the Lansing National Bank offices, another national bank opposite the Second National Bank. And just, if you're wondering about banknotes, yes, Lansing National also issued currency. There were two banks known as Lansing National Bank during the time period. The first one, which is this one, there's but one note known on the bank, and that is held locally by another collector in the Lansing area. And that just came to light within the last couple of years. The later Lansing National Bank issued small-sized banknotes, national currency. The Wood Central Art Gallery was above the Lansing National Bank. The big bookstore of F.F. Russell is further down, right next to it.
Are you checking down in here?
Yep. Then Baker and Porter Furniture, which is the tall building. You see the building that says has the furniture sign on top of it. The next tall building further up the block is the Glove and Mitten Factory of John A. Elder and Company. All of those are on the left. On the right, starting at the corner, is the real estate offices of Jones and Porter, watchmaker H.B. Morgan, Morgan Jewelers, and Ingersoll's dry goods store. Now what's interesting is this photograph, and if you look, it's about the 4th building on the right-hand side. The sign that appears above that building says Ingersoll's on it, and checking the directories at the time, that is Ingersoll's store. Later, they would move over to Michigan Avenue, adjacent to the Second National Bank building, the back of it. Okay? So this is quite an early view. It's a nice clean view. If you look at the streets, see how they're done, and see how time is going to change, because the next image I'm going to show you is a comparison shot from the first decade of the 20th century. So you can take a look at that. So get a good look at this one. And notice the transportation, the mode of transportation. Notice the lighting. Notice the buildings. And now I'm going to bring you into the 20th century. There's the same view, but right around circa 1910. The welcome sign was illuminated. They were very popular during this time period. The building on the right is the Pruden Block, the home of the American Savings Bank. Has replaced its 1870s counterpart by this time. The electric wires not only power that sign, but all the street lighting that's there. Look at the modes of transportation that you have in this photograph, and it doesn't show up real clear, but there are horses still on that street. So you've got the streetcars, the automobile, horsepower, it's all there. You've got someone in the center of the street there directing traffic. Just on the power poles. It's just incredible how things changed. And it would be nice to take a 2003 photograph and overlay that, and it would probably hold the same interest now that we're in the 21st century, in the first decade. This is a bird's eye view of Lansing, looking to the southwest, circa 1879. This is another Charles Meade photograph that was previously unknown and unpublished. Again, the Capitol is such a monument within the city. I think Jim described it at one point, it seemed Romanesque.
It's called the Lion of Lansing.
Yeah, the Lion of Lansing. So it's just an incredible view. The bridge. You can see Meade's chair mill there. Meade's Mill, right there, right along the river. Okay.
You can see the theater too up by the
Yep, the theater.
Baird's Bucks, Gladmere. I refer to it as the
Yep.
Gladmere because it's
Right above Meade's Mill, Jim, can you point to it? There's Meade's Hall again, the back side of Meade's Hall with the humpback
right
roof.
there.
Yep.
We'll see
So-
a better picture of it.
And then go further over to the right, and you can see the first state capitol again. Okay, right there, just poking up. And Plymouth Congregational Church steeple, you can see to the right of the stack of Meade's Mill. But if you look at the Iron Bridge, Shiawassee Street Bridge, it's just one of those incredible views that he captured, and perhaps captured it from the Meade residence, which you're going to see a photograph of shortly.
Is that the school on the right?
Right here. Sorry. No, it was an opera house. It becomes the Gladmere Theater eventually. They tear down the front of the theater and keep the stage area, and they rebuilt that new structure onto the front during, was it 1930s? No, yeah, 1930s. It was done. We have some really neat photos of that this time.
So which way are we looking?
Yeah, southwest from North Lansing.
Yeah.
Here's the back. Again, here's the back of the Opera House right here. And I'm not sure, this is Meade's Hall that, I'm going to move out of your way, that Craig's been referring to quite a bit. This was, I have to get the name right, so I have to look at this. This was the Central Methodist Episcopal Church. It was on the corner of Ottawa and Washington. One of the interesting things about the church is they never finished the steeple. It stood for 38 years and it was torn down in the early 1900s. But you can see, I mean, it's a beautiful view looking from the Capitol. You're looking northeast. You can just see a little bit of the Dodge block, which is right here. There's some really interesting buildings downtown in the northern part of town at that time.
Over to the left side is the current.
I'm sorry, I didn't
There's
hear
that
that.
corner. Yep.
No, you're in the lower left corner.
Lower left corner.
Left.
Okay,
You're on the
yep,
left.
I see it right there. Over by the red line.
Wait a minute, you got me confused, I'm sorry. I was looking at that one that's a Methodist, and now you say this is Methodist. I go to the Methodist church, so I'm a little confused.
That's the Episcopal Methodist.
Well,
There was, it's,
No, the smaller one in the middle of the frame is the
Right.
original one, and then they built this larger one that is currently that, and so that's probably not an active method.
no, it was used for storage for several years. It was used as a warehouse.
what is there now? Where up is it? Episcopal.
With a small-
Right here?
Small church house. There's a Baptist.
It's a Victor building, isn't it?
Yeah, there's,
Oh, sure.
because this is what you're, this is Washington right here.
That's the city hall.
No,
No.
Just an office building.
Post office.
So, office building for the
Yeah.
House of Representatives spans that's Ottawa.
Right, yeah, right there.
Right,
That's right, you're right.
so, the
It
office
spans the
building for the House is on both sides of Ottawa Street now, and actually spans
Yeah.
over it.
But that's on Capitol.
No, that's
Oh,
No,
yeah.
this is Washington right here.
down there, this
This
is
would be
Capitol.
Capitol down here.
Right.
You can just see the little knob on the wing of the Capitol right there.
The Capitol Road should be right across the street.
No,
You're
Capitol,
looking from
this
the
is
Capitol
from
Dome.
Yeah.
You're looking at it from the Capitol Dome.
Yeah.
Northeast.
Looking northeast.
Next.
Sure.
Here's another one from the Capitol Dome. This is another Charles Meade photograph, again, out of the scrapbook, previously unpublished. This one is looking east, towards the Agricultural College at the time. And
Means Hall's
you
up
can,
here.
you can see the heart of the city, you can see the landmarks that we've been talking about. There's the church, again, that Jim was discussing. There's the printing office. Right up from there, the humpback roof of Meade's Hall that Jim recalled. Beyond that, if you look right above Meade's Hall, you see an ornate structure, which is the Lakeshore Michigan Southern Railroad Depot, located on the east bank of the Grand River. So, and you can see how Michigan Avenue pretty much slopes down, okay, which would be a different view than today.
This was an interesting part too, that piece along Michigan Avenue, because there was nothing there. It was a series of those
Right.
small shops until they built the Oakland building.
And on that opposite corner would obviously come the City Hall, which would be on your left, the post office,
Would be in through here.
and then the buildings would be raised to make way for the new City Hall if we bring it into contemporary times. The printing office would serve as the YMCA
Right.
at one time. And so you see a lot of change, and this is just a nice early view that pretty much shows where the City Hall is today, that it was an empty block at that time. A nice clear image.
We talk about that in the book too.
Oh,
The city
yeah.
fathers were embarrassed
Yeah.
because you were coming down Michigan Avenue toward the Capitol and you hit this sort of like little shanty town area right before you got to the Capitol.
So, and it appears that the streets have been watered down in this photograph as well.
I don't know if we have a picture of that, the water.
We don't.
What's the time frame
It's
on
in the
this?
book. This one's right around 1879.
Wow.
Yep.
Those
So-
automobiles park
No. No.
But to keep down the dust, the city had these huge water trucks, just with large barrels on the back. That's what Craig's referring to. And they would go down the street watering the streets.
Meade was an active photographer. Actually, his studio was right on Michigan Avenue, within that first block, originally. Would have been where the Pruden building is today. His shop would have been immediately behind that. You know, there's a little alley there. It would have been on the other side of the alley at the time. Meade was a photographer in Lansing between 1876 and 1879, so a short period. But there are drawings and other things that exist on Charles Meade and on the city of Lansing. He recorded it from the late 1860s, right beyond 1900. So,
What population are we talking about at this period?
1879. Yeah,
Probably about 30, what would you say?
yeah, I don't know.
We don't know. If you call me tomorrow at work, I'll give you an answer. Because I have this all charted out at work. This is North Washington Avenue. The streetcar's just about ready to make a turn on the Franklin Avenue, right-hand turn to Franklin Avenue. In this building, in this image, I don't know if there's fire station number 2, right here. And as you go up, there is, this building's still standing at one point. If you're driving down Washington Avenue, north on Washington Avenue today, that building you see right in front of you is this building. The problem is, it's a brick structure from here down. This is a wooden structure, it's been removed. The tower, if you look, you'll see it. The tower has been removed off the building. Right in the corner, there's two really interesting buildings here. Right on the corner was, and I love this name, Walker Rocheteria and George Dashiell's Meat Market. The buildings were built by a man named Walker. It's called the Walker Block. And right here is the Eldorado Fruit and Tobacco Company, which eventually is torn down when Walker buys the property and expands the block. And the church up in the corner, obviously, is, let's see, Franklin Avenue Presbyterian. Right?
Franklin Avenue, did that become Grand River?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, is that that's not the Presbyterian church that's there now?
I believe it is. That was 1910. 1910. That was from 1910.
Okay.
This is from the standpipe, and I don't think we put a picture of the standpipe in this presentation. But the standpipe's an interesting little piece of architecture in Lansing. Here you can see the railroad depot that Craig referred to earlier. And eventually this is moved because this is a floodplain. And there are several photos of that, the depot being completely flooded out. Craig, you're squinting. This is the Grand River Boat Club, which I find interesting. Rowing during the late 1890s, 1880s, 1890s was a sport that was comparable to NFL football today. It was highly competitive. There was a club here. They've won several races. There's a famous photo of, the club visiting on Christmas Day, being towed in their boat, which is very interesting. You can see the high school just right there.
Approximately where are we?
You are off, this is Michigan Avenue?
Okay.
So this is Shiawassee Street Bridge up there?
Yes.
Yep.
The standpipe was the water tower for the city. And we have a picture of it in the book. We didn't add one here because we refer to so many pictures as being shot from the standpipe. We thought it only fair that we put a picture of the photo of the standpipe in and do a little history on it.
Where was it?
It was where you would go if you were at Olds Park. You would cross the street where there's water treatment. You know where the parking lot is across the street from Olds Park, south of Olds Park, and then you would continue on and you have that slight little rise. It would have been up there. But like I said, this is Michigan Avenue. You can see it. I have to check my notes. Look in.
What bridge is that?
Shiawassee. And unfortunately, you can't, in this image, make out the school for the blind. I don't think I can make it out in this.
Is that water off of the river? It shows reflections of this water.
Here,
That's the river.
that's the river.
And north of that. and there's a-
Up there,
No, come on this way. This way.
here.
No.
Sorry.
South. Go south.
Go south. Well, this is south down here.
No. Ah,
On the west side of the river.
where did you
Okay,
say,
so-
where did you say to go from?
Right here.
Show me. All right, now, right there, to the left of that.
That's a building.
That's a building. Yeah.
Roof? That's a roof?
The roof of the building,
building.
a very long,
Would be a boathouse.
Where? Here?
it's a long building.
Long
This?
run
Yeah.
south.
No, it's BMET.
It's what?
That's BMET. Sorry. And then Craig and I have discussed this. There was a large manufacturer. We have a photo later on, but there was not a BMET, but of one of the ironworks here. Lansing was known for manufacturing. Before the autos, BMET was one of the leading producers of stoves. in the country, and they built some beautiful stoves. We have a picture in the book of one of their little advertising pamphlets on stoves. They also produced sleds, some
Runners.
They produced some farming equipment. They failed between I have the exact date in the notes, but between 1900 and 1910, there were several depressions, and the company went under that. Craig, you're squinting.
Craig has to squint.
But it was a factory.
Is that the one that some of us have heard called Thin Man?
Well,
Yeah.
I have to admit, I am not from here, so I'm learning this as I go along. Every day I learn something new. But men, I would say demon. My parents are from Canada. We say Iona. You say Iona. How do you say that? It's just too much for me, Lyon
But-
to me is Leon, not lion.
The Capital Oak stove and other fancy parlor stoves, cooking ranges, things like that, all made of cast iron, beautifully done with nickel ornamentation around them, and that would have come out of the Bement factory at the time.
Just a couple months ago, at our Mason Historical Society, we had a report on some of the things, and it was one thing especially was the buggy works that was in Mason. And the Bements started the buggy factory, and then when they could no longer really sell buggies and make a lot of money, they moved to Lansing to see what they could do. And I'm wondering, imagine it's the same in that. And they're still Bements.
Yep.
Living in that.
So did the Mills
Yes.
family. They moved from
There are.
their business originated in Mason and moved to Lansing too.
So Germans.
Bement. I'll work on this, honest. This is a neat little, I should explain, this photo is that big in real life. So and Craig and I work with this a lot.
I think so.
What is it?
No, it's the Capitol Bank Tower, or
Old tower.
Old Tower, but when it was built the Capitol Bank Tower, right?
Yep.
Went through a series of names, so I have to, from the time of the photo, that's what we took it as. It's confusing sometimes because, and it's had, what other names is it? Capitol Bank Tower, the Old Tower, the Michigan National Bank Tower, nobody knows what it's called today, right?
Bogey's
Did they go with Bogie?
Yep.
Okay, I know it now. What's to the left?
It's called an ego trip.
Right here?
Hotel.
That's Old
Oh,
Hotel,
okay.
or the Romney Building,
Yeah.
it's
Jack Tower.
Jack Tower. I can run down the statistics on the building if you would like. Okay. Let me tell you how many bricks were involved.
They need to know.
Okay, well, I thought
Just tell us how many.
Photograph of 1929.
654,000. And someone counted them, which is really scary.
Well, what was in front there? No,
Let me go back.
The old hotel.
no.
No. Can you go back?
Yeah, just a second.
It looked like some kind of a fence or a gate or something.
Oh, no. Just a second. Isn't technology wonderful, folks?
When it works.
Never mind.
No, we can go back. We'll get there.
Little slideshows.
I don't have to be to work till 9 tomorrow morning.
There it is.
Yeah.
There you go.
The pillars that it's
Right here?
Yeah, is that just
That's part
the
of the
back of
building.
the building?
Yeah.
Is that what that is?
If I'm right, and we talked about this once before, the building was actually constructed to be able to take 2 towers, wasn't it? It's structurally sound to take two towers. So yeah, this is part of the building right there.
That's why they want to build another one.
I can't explain, I mean,
Yeah.
We need more office space downtown Lansing.
Yeah, you don't want
Right.
to my views on this.
And chapter 2, business and industry.
We chose this picture because everyone's has seen the Knapp's building. Well, this is the second Knapp's building. And we thought we was, which is interesting.
Kresge.
Pardon?
There's a Kresge building.
That's the later, that's the one that they've renovated just recently downtown.
Yeah.
There was another Kresge building earlier on, that was built specifically. That building was built, geez, in the 20s? Yes, in the 20s, and Renninger did the construction on it. There's the Downing Hotel. Right here we're at, let's see, what's the street address? Sorry, 220 South Washington. But it's an interesting, there's a whole story behind that. It's in the, I keep saying it's in the book. They originally were located at 123 North Washington, and they moved to South Washington to be able to compete better with our boats.
There's one of the Downey Hotel, is that one of the?
Didn't they match this?
That's it, yeah.
But it was interesting because we weren't able to find a photo of the first Knapp's. But the Kresge building was built, that building right there was built in the 1920s. So we try to get close enough on the dating. When did Downey come down? It was torn down in the 30s. The building of that, yeah.
When was the fire?
The fire was earlier on,
1912.
yeah, and only the interior was destroyed, not the shell of the building. There's a photo of the interior later on in this presentation. The bar. Clark Carriage Works. This was on the river, Kalamazoo and Grand. It was considered one of the finest carriage manufacturers in this state. He had outlets throughout the Midwest for his material. Frank Clark, his son, eventually produces the Clarkmobile. I'm not sure, and I'm no automotive historian, but Clark designs the first frame for the old, wasn't it? Frank Clark.
He assisted Ransom Olds
And, yeah.
with the body on the track.
But the factory burns on July 3rd, 1906. And it's rebuilt soon afterwards, but Clark eventually moves. With the failure of the Clarkmobile, he begins to produce the Power Wagon, and he eventually moves to Pontiac. He produces a truck that fails. He dies in Mason in the 1930s, I believe. I think he survived longer than that. I'm not sure about it. I thought he died in the 1930s. But, Craig?
Next. Jim liked a lot of photographs.
What do you mean I like the one?
I liked them all.
I never get to run the machine. This photograph gave us some problems because it's always been identified as Nova.
Novo.
Novo. N-O-V-A.
N-O-V-O.
Nova? I thought it was Nova. See? We found a clipping in the Lansing State Journal from the 1930s that identifies it as the old gray iron foundry, which makes sense when you see what they're working with the dirt floors and the castings they're doing.
Well, it's a foundry, but didn't every factory have its own?
Well,
Almost.
yeah, but the person who said, my father owned this photo, this is what it is. And it later becomes part of the Lansing Iron and Engine Works. It was located up on North Cedar.
And I think one of the interesting things with the photograph is know where the lighting comes from. Okay. You know, yeah. Furnace, also from the large windows. If you look on the left, you can really see the light coming in, pouring in through there. Kind of gives it a unique look. And some of the early manufacturing photographs, you notice how there are all these massive windows because obviously electric lighting and gas lighting and everything like that needed to be supplemented. So
you can see some of the castings on right here, and there. That's me again, isn't it?
You're up the river with this one.
This is an interesting photo because they're cutting ice out of the Grand River. And those are the sheds where it was stored on. It would be dropped on this conveyor. And when I was checking and doing some reading on this photo, the interesting thing I found, and this is the company that this refers to is called Clear Bear Company. And the reason they cut, this is just west of the Logan Street Bridge, and their advertising was it was called upriver ice, which meant that it didn't go through the city, but it was clean. And which I just thought was amazing even then, but I guess you could understand why, because on that bend was all the heavy industry until you cleared North Lansing.
Was that for ice boxes?
It would be cut, I don't know if it's in, it would be cut in the winter and it would last until September. And then September and October, you have a little bit of a problem.
Approximate year?
Of this photo, we gave it as 1917. It was towards the end. Because what we do is we go back. We have this, buy Woodward's shoes. We have this, so we would start checking the city directors to see when all three businesses existed. Woodworth existed for a long time in Lansing. So that's our anchor, and then we go to those.
Was Brown Brothers in the downtown? In the 20s?
And O'Connor was on, I believe he had a store in the Dodge Block in North Washington.
This is a site of the Pruden building today. Broy's One Price clothing store. And they advertised over 5,000 varieties and suits for men and boys to select from. The store is located at 101 East Michigan Avenue. Charles Broaz had a variety of business interests in Lansing in the era before the First World War. Not only was he a clothing dealer, but he also was involved in real estate. The second floor housed the Davis sewing machine and the tobacconist Roy Hardy cigar. Notice the sign for the Mead Portrait Gallery right to the right. Remember the building that I was talking to you about as being Mead's shop? Now this is a photograph that again, circa 1880s. There are several original views of this building that exist, all the same photograph, and none of them are in great condition at all. That's why you see a lot of the darkness and splotching to it. Mead, not only was he an artist and photographer, but he also did a lot of advertising, not only for his own business, but throughout the state he cut woodcuts for newspapers. And they were all comically related for the most part. He would produce multiple flyers and brochures for Broaz. He worked for him for a couple of years. And it's just a unique view of one of our early clothing stores that had something for everyone. And probably one of the most unique items from an advertising standpoint, especially if you're a baseball nut, is this National Baseball League handbill. What you see is the front and the back of this bill, and it shows the Detroit team, members on the back. The manager on the front, a player holding a bat on the right, and they're talking about saving 25%, Lansing, Michigan. These would be passed out as advertising handbills. The colors on this are green and black on white stock. So it's quite a colorful note. There was a company that went around producing these for various businesses at the time, depending on which city or state that they were in, advertising the various teams. And notes such as this one are hard to find today, and the reason because it was ephemeral. It was a paper item. It was meant to be disposable. So there are very few that exist today.
You would have used it to get your discount.
And you would have, yeah, exactly. But for the 1887 Detroit team, what a great item.
What was our record?
Better than last
Better
year.
than last year.
Yeah, that's right. Better than last year. That's a good one.
Oh, This is F.J. Christopher's grocery store in South Washington. He was at 1149 South Washington. The building's still there. It's just recently been renovated. It's part of the Sparrow Block. It's the last building before you get to the railroad station on South Washington. On the
Washington?
Yes.
That's the piano shop?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness.
There's an interior shot in the book. What's really neat, and this is one of the beauties of digital, being able to scan items. When we blow this up, these are all Kellogg's Toasted Cornflake boxes in the windows. It's really, he was pretty creative. He searched for a time. Christopher originally began his life in Lansing as a fireman with Fire Station Number 2 out of North Lansing. He was present at the Bryan fire and almost died when the wall collapsed early in the morning. But he later becomes, I believe he becomes an alderman. Number 2, what that must have been edited out. But I thought he became a Lansing alderman. The store, this is probably circa, what we give it as, 1904, no, about 1910 or 1912. There's a nice interior shot too, but we didn't use it here, I'm sorry.
Fire hydrant.
Yeah, you're right. I didn't notice that. It's right in front of me too.
I think that's still there.
There's we have a larger picture of the entire block too, which is really neat because you see how important local stores were to communities. And then we have Arbog. Now, is it Arbogs or? But this is after the expansion. Originally, this wouldn't have been present when the building expanded. Today, the building is without this detail across the top, and the water tower is gone. I can run down this for you. I'll just read it because there's a lot here, and I can't recite it in any type of order. Is everybody okay with that? Arbog's department store, located at 401 South Washington Avenue. Constructed in 1904 to 1905, the structure was the first skyscraper in Lansing. Frank Arbog, along with his partner D.C. Cameron, agreed in the early 1900s to expand their growing business, and that the time was right to construct a large department store to be known as Cameron and Arbog. Later in 1909, Arbog would buy out his partner, and the business became known as F&N Arbog Company. Frank Arbog was an innovator in the retail industry. He opened a self-serve grocery in the basement of the building, provided free parking for his patrons, and during the Depression survived by providing good service at low prices. In 1953, interest in the Arbog department store was sold to Sperry and Hutchinson Company, which operated the Wurzburg department stores. In 1969, the building was renamed Wurzburg's, and it closed in 1973. Frank Arbog died in 1955. The building still stands today. It's on South Washington and Kalamazoo. It's covered with glass, and there is a move to remove the glass and restore it to this state. Currently, all this is, the top part, the pediment, is gone. So I don't know if they're going to bring that back, but they want to return it to this state. They're going to turn the basement into parking. You would enter off Washington, wrap around the back, and enter the building from the back. They want to turn it into studio apartments. I believe 50 is what the plan is.
By the way, Jim, for those of us born south of the Canadian border, GH is silent.
See? Failed speech in school.
Chapter 3 is automobile capital, obviously. And this man needs no introduction. R.E. Olds, Lansing automotive pioneer, born in Geneva, Ohio in 1864, and moved to Lansing with his father in 1880. During 1886, R.E. Olds developed a vehicle powered by a stationary steam engine. In 1896, he assembled a vehicle with a gas engine and a body built by Clark Carriage Company. The inventor, along with several local investors, formed the Olds Motor Vehicle Company in 1897, which would later evolve into the Olds Motor Works. Olds left the company in 1904, began the Rio Motor Car Company at that time, and remained at the head of the company through 1936. And Olds' internal combustion engine vehicle of 1896, what you see here. The Olds horseless carriage is depicted in this contemporary woodcut illustration. It is not a photograph. If anyone ever finds the original photograph of this image, call me. I'll give you a reward. The illustration shows Ransom Olds at the tiller with carriage builder Frank Clark at his front seat as his front seat passenger. Seated at the rear are Mrs. Clark on the left and Mrs. Olds. A 5-horsepower gasoline motor provided the vehicle with a maximum speed of 18 miles per hour. And there are times I wish my kids still had a vehicle that went 18 miles per hour. So, you know, I mean, when people mention Lansing, Oldsmobile, you know, that's what they think of. And such an integral part. This is the 1896 vehicle. The Olds Motor Works assembly line in 1902. Now, if you were to calculate the value of those rows of curved dash Oldsmobiles today, then I could retire if they were available. But this shows, this view, circa 1902, shows the curved dash Oldsmobile in various stages of production. Again, from an original photograph taken by an Olds employee at the time. It's just a fabulous photograph showing the early automotive industry in Lansing. As I mentioned, Ransom Olds left this company, formed the Rio Motor Car Company in 1904. This is an interior view circa 1905 of the plant, showing the chassis being walked across the bridge to the next building. You see the tower there with Rio. At the top of that tower is a weather vane. And who can tell me what the weather vane is? It's a Rio. You can't see it real well, but it is a Rio automobile at the top. So just, again, fabulous photographs. You look at the windows, see all the light got into the building for manufacturing and everything, just as it was in the 02 for the Olds Motor Works.
Yeah, but that inner cord isn't paved. Just to give you some idea for Rio celebrates its centennial next year, 2004. Automobile production during 1905 totaled only 864 vehicles. Rio reached its peak production in 1937 with 33,353 vehicles annually. In the final year of production, the company manufactured 3,206 automobiles. And remember, Rio also produced trucks. In 1936, they entered their automotive production here at that time. So next July, go down to South Washington. The weekend is
July 17th.
July 17th. And you'll see all kinds of wonderful Rios.
That's the homecoming.
So keep that on your calendar, and I'm sure you're going to be hearing a lot more about it.
Oh, excuse me, you don't have to wait that long. Come down Friday at 4 o'clock and do the whole day.
That's right.
That's for the mural.
Yep. Yeah, the mural's going to be dedicated in Rio town this Friday at 4 o'clock. Our next chapter is public service.
This is a petition to the Common Council of the City of Lansing asking them not to repeal the ordinance of 1874. The ordinance of 1874 prohibited residents from grazing livestock in the city limits. The mayor at the time felt that it would be beneficial to the poor if they could graze their livestock at the city parks, anywhere in the city where they could find fodder. They ignored the petition, repealed the law, and within 6 months the law was back in place because people were just tired of walking around town in boots, etc. So it's nice to know that things haven't changed.
There must have been a good reason for that. I think it was in the middle of the Depression at the time.
Well, the mayor at the time felt that he could capture the voting power of the down and out. And so he offered this, saying, look, you can graze your animals in the city. Well, you know, you still have to function and walk around the city.
This is continuing the public service theme. This is a photograph taken March 27th, 1904, Fire Station Number 1. of the Lansing Fire Department. The organization of Lansing Fire Department began in 1857. A meeting of the citizens was held for that organization. By October of that year, a constitution had been drafted and bylaws were adopted. Prior to this, the only fire protection there was a bucket brigade in the city at that time. The badge that you see on the lower right-hand corner is for LFD chemical number 1, which is the piece of apparatus on the left-hand side of the photograph above. The horse-drawn chemical apparatus is usually the first line of defense in any community until the steamer. You've seen the steamers. There's one that's sitting out in front of Michigan Miller's building. Until the steamers had enough power to draft water for the fire. The fireman's badge recalls the glory days of the horse-drawn apparatus by featuring a horse head right in the center of it. And during this period, George B. Andrews was the driver of chemical number 1, and that is George's badge. Right there. But you see the dogs in front of the horses. Usually the dog would go ahead to clear the way in some instances, but you see all those fine public servants up there ready to serve the old fire station.
Is this volunteer?
Yes, this is volunteer.
And where is this located, do you know?
At the south end of Allegan Street. I'm sorry, at the east end of Allegan Street. Yeah, on Grand. There were actually 2 stations. This one's on Allegan Street. Then there was one later that was at the foot of Allegan and right at Grand, where the parking garage is today. Right there.
There were 2 stations in Lansing at this time.
Yeah, but Station 1 had moved, and then there was the North Lansing station, and
there's a little synopsis of this in the newsletter.
there is, yeah. The Historical Society newsletter this month highlights firefighting in Lansing with some historical background. We go from horse-drawn apparatus to 1908 with the first auto fire engine on an Oldsmobile chassis. Chief Delfs was responsible for bringing that about. This vehicle went into service in December of 1908. Was quite successful, was kept at Station 1 at that time. And from there, I mean, it's basically history. In 1909, on that photograph, there was a large convention of fire chiefs here within the city, and guess what the featured attraction was at that time? That piece of apparatus. Okay? So that's one of the reasons that they held it here. This is a photograph of the Lansing Fire Department circa 1894. Lansing Police Department, thanks, Jerry. The Lansing Police Department was officially formed in 1893. John P. Sanford, who's in the middle front row there with his leg crossed, was appointed first chief of police effective August 3rd, 1893. The 1893 budget administered by the chief included salaries of $7,380. Rollback. Feeding of prisoners, $500. Rent for the jail, $500. Clubs and belts, $23, as well as other expenses. Here's the Lansing Police Department's auto patrol wagon, circa 1909. Yep, the Black Maria is what this was known as at the time. Light gauge wire was stretched across the back open areas to deter escapes. The Lansing Police Department was among one of the first in the nation to have an auto patrol.
That wasn't to let people see that you've been arrested?
Well,
Public shaming?
put you on display.
Then in front of City Hall?
Again, it's interesting. This is a convention badge from 1906 for the chiefs of police, sheriffs, and prosecuting attorneys, and it features a curved dash Oldsmobile because we are the auto city.
Wow.
At the time.
This is the return of Lansing's own 119th Field Artillery Regiment from their service in World War I. The 630 soldiers of the unit were greeted with a hero's welcome they deserved for service in the wars and all wars. On Tuesday, May 13th, 1919, thousands of Lansing residents turned out to welcome the returning soldiers. The parade was led by a Lansing resident and commanding officer of the regiment, Colonel Chester B. McCormick.
Our next chapter deals with and the first airplane in the Lansing area, anyone want to go for a ride? Was Jimmy Ward with the Shooting Star. The Journal at the time sponsored him to come here to the racetrack, and more than 20,000 spectators surrounded the grounds. And why I say surrounded is because most of them decided, well, we don't have to pay for it. We can see him from outside of the fence in the airplane going up, or the aeroplane at the time. Jimmy Ward, the publicity that was given by the Journal prior to his event, one of the statements that he made was, "We'll come if alive." Because at this time, when you went up in one of these contraptions, okay, you didn't live too long, most generally. And a couple of pilots that did come here only lived a couple of years after their event that had occurred here. But this is on October 15th, 1911. So, and being the centennial of flight this year, if anyone wants to go ride in this, this is known as a Curtiss Pusher, because the propellers are in the back of the plane, and this has tricycle landing gear on it. But Jimmy's off to my right, your right there, waving the Forest Park Memorial Library, part of the Capital Area District Library, in the lower level of the main library downtown. We appreciate the contributions of Barbara Caterino, because without her, Dave Caterino's collection would never have been placed at the Capital Area District Library upon his death. The Historical Society of Greater Lansing. The Meade photographs that you see, the scrapbook is owned by the Historical Society. The Lansing Police Department photographs that you saw, Pat Hayden supplied those, who has written the ultimate history at the centennial of the Lansing Police Department. Babe Wyatt Ruth supplied a few photographs. Whitney Miller at the MSU Archives and Historical Collection supplied photograph and provided assistance in this. And just to let you know that the royalties from... Yeah.
Jerry Lawler.
Oh, well, and Jerry is noted as well.
Indispensable. We called